Coach Vincent Show is brought to you by Bellini's Texas Grill, located in beautiful downtown Vista Ridge, Texas, at the corner of Palmer and Colonial Parkway. Remember, after every home game, visit Bellini's for the Ranger Pizza Buffet, where Gerald, Susie, and the whole crew say, "Go Rangers!" And now, here's Gage Smith and Coach Vincent.
Hey guys, welcome to this week's edition of the Coach Vincent Show, brought to you by Bellini's Texas Grill off Colonial Parkway. So let's start this show off by talking about the game versus Dripping Springs last week. It was a great game. Vista Ridge won 24 against Dripping Springs. We got 17. Now let's go through our players of the week. Offensive MVP was a tie between Leland Dunn and Adrian Duncan. Offensive back player of the week was Stedman Mayberry. Offensive lineman went to Fidel Estrada and Lucas Quintero. Offensive receiver was Blake Gossett. Defensive MVP was Eddie Brock. Linebacker of the week was Dylan Carter. Secondary player of the week was Jordan Benford. Defensive line went to Isaac Higgins and Micah Thomas. Special Forces was another cross between Blake Gossett and Chris Nichols. And the Hammer Award went to Eddie Brock.
Okay, players of the week. This week we want to highlight on our freshman teams, our offensive back and wide receiver players of the week. Proud of our freshmen, both of them winning against Dripping Springs. Offensive back was Jay Mobley. Receiver was Tyler Harris and Dylan D. Hunt. And then in our freshman black game, offensive back was Justin Carter, and our receiver of the game was Tyler Brown and Elijah Newsom. In our JV games, our offensive back was split between Drew Fanny and Grant Randall. Our wide receiver was Jake Shelton. And then our JV black had a big win over Rouse, and our wide receiver of the week was Chandler Harrison and Parker McCune. And our backs of the week were Cooper Stopcheck and Fernando Mares.
And every week we like to highlight our hide hats, the guys who really, put forth all the effort that we needed in our scout teams. This week's hard hats went to Mike Valdez, Ty Hjort, Nick Stevenson, Gage Smith, Dakota Williams, Zayn Al-Zain, Matthew Piper, Drew Fanny, and Cooper Stopcheck.
Okay, I also just wanted to mention real quick, we just came out with our academic report, and we had a record number of AB honor rolls. We had 75 kids that made the AB honor roll in our football program, and 11 of our guys were just excellent. They made all A's, and so we had a big deal this last week, honoring those guys and making sure that we're getting ready for this next 6 weeks. So I'm really proud of our boys for our academic report this week.
And those guys will all be listed on the VistaRidgeFootball.mobi, so please go check that out. All right, so let's get into this show. Dripping Spring was a very close game. We had, some key players making some key plays. And one thing that I've noticed that we've done every single week is we played hard all 4 quarters and really found a way to pull that out. That's what we coach, right?
Well, we always talk to our players about finding a way to win. And regardless of what's going on in the game, we want to win the 4th quarter. We talked about that several times, I know, on this show. One of the big things, one of the keys in this game is we got a lead, and then we made a special forces mistake, and it kind of let them get that momentum back, and then it turned into a fight, which, I've talked to a lot of people, and Dripping Springs, they will give you that kind of fight every year. It's kind of been one of those battles every year. But I was proud of our kids for overcoming the special forces mistake and playing hard there at the end. There was a couple times we had some wide open receivers that we hit and dropped. I mean, there was a couple touchdowns we felt like we left, on the field that we didn't get on the scoreboard. And so we've got to do a better job of taking advantage of those opportunities and not getting ourselves in that type of situation.
Right, and those mistakes that were made in the last week's game, they're going to hurt us coming up in Leander. Leander was ranked really high. They were actually first in our area at one point. We coach our players. I'm assuming you'll coach your players. Like, that's not a big deal, right?
Well, Leander does have a great football team. One of the things Leander's got, they've got a lot of history going too. They've been successful in the playoffs in the past. They've got a program that's well established. One of the big things about Leander is they're fast. They've got speed everywhere. We feel like we've got a really fast football team too, but they do a good job offensively of spreading you out and getting the balls in different locations on the field to fast guys. Whether it's with fast motion, whether it's inside, whether it's pulling and kicking, their power game. I think they do a good job of just spacing out where they're attacking you. So you got to defend the entire field. Defensively, they got one of the best defenses in Central Texas for 2 years in a row, and they fly around. So it's going to be important. I feel like that our offensive line and our backs, when they're blocking, that they stay on blocks and finish blocks, not to just get that initial punch and let them go, because they are so fast. So to me, that's the biggest deal with Leander is just how do we match up with their speed and the things that we need to do on defense and offense.
Now, you said it yourself, they have a pretty sound offense and a pretty sound defense. And part of their defense, they've got some really fast secondary guys. What do you have in the plan to take care of that?
Well, the biggest thing with them is, like I said, I think we got to be physical with them. I mean, they're fast, but I think if you're physical with them and you finish with them, I think that's a big deal. There's some things that you've got to try to do to open up some windows with guys that are faster in the secondary. But one of the biggest things is just staying on blocks on the perimeter with them, running great routes. When you have someone with that kind of speed in the secondary, all the little things, all the details, the stem of the route, the ball get off, everything with the routes that we run has got to be good. And then the timing of the throwing game, making sure the ball gets out when it's supposed to, make sure we're hitting receivers on breaks. So those will be big keys to us being able to attack that secondary.
And I've seen them play. Leander, they're a pretty good ball team. I personally was watching their defensive line go against the Rouse offensive line during our bye week. How do you think our front line matches up with their front line, not just on offense, but on defense as well?
I think it's going to be a good matchup. I think their offensive line is a quick offensive line. They're not the biggest offensive line we face, but they got good size, good strength, and they're quick. And I think that matchup is going to be really interesting because I feel like we've got a quick D-line. It's going to be important that our defensive line be in the right places against their offensive line, because one of the things they're really great at is if you shut down the hole, the intended place where they're wanting to run, their backs do a good job of bouncing. So it's important that our outside backers and inside backers fit and stay where they're supposed to on that. As far as their defensive line, they've got a real good defensive line that's active. One of the things that I'm impressed with their defensive line is they do a good job of reading. They're not necessarily the same type of defensive line we've faced here the last couple of weeks, more of an attacking defensive line. They do a good job of reading and getting off blocks, and I feel like that's their strength. So, like I was saying with our offensive line earlier, our offensive line it's got to be about finishing blocks, staying on blocks, staying on blocks, staying on blocks, so that we can get a crease and get by that first level.
And one of the keys that our team does, we're known for it, is our special team. What are some things that we have planned for Leander?
Well, the biggest thing is we went back this week and there's some things we need to correct. Leander is probably one of the better special forces we faced this year. And part of that is they've got great speed in the back end, their return guys, but also their coaches do a really good job of teaching them how to block kicks. So we've got to be real sound on our protection. So the biggest thing for us on special forces is we've got to protect. And when you've got speed on the field, the other biggest thing is you've got to tackle well in space. So we've got to do a good job of coming to balance, making sure that we fit right on all of our coverages, and then make a great open field tackle. So to me, the open field tackling and protecting against their blocks is going to be a really big deal for us.
Really taking care of business. So what are some things that we have to look forward to in Mr. Ridge, Texas this week? Everything going on.
Well, this week, as you know, this week is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, actually. And this week, our JV has the home game. So at our JV home game, that'll be their night on Thursday night for the breast cancer awareness. And we will be passing around the helmet to raise money, and it's going to go to a good cause. And then the following week, for our freshmen, when they come back home and our varsity comes back home for the Marble Falls game, that'll be a week that we honor some people, but we also try to raise some money to help with that great cause that week also. So those are the two biggest things that we got coming. We've got all of our teams are playing Leander. We got 4 games slated for Thursday night at Leander and here at Ranger Stadium. So ought to be some great football on Thursday night, and then we travel to Bible on Friday for the varsity game.
There's some big games indeed. And guys, be sure to check out the VistaRidgeFootball.mobi. We're still selling the shirts. Order them. We'll have them for the Pink Out game coming not this week, but the week after. I'd like to thank Bellini's. Great atmosphere, great food. Please check it out. And that'll do it for this week's Coach Vincent Show.